Hello everyone and welcome to today's live broadcast, Clinical Core Lab Design from Looking Up to Looking Down, presented by Tammy, Germini, Director Lab Operations at Geisinger Medical Center. I'm Susie Valdez of LabRoots and I'll be your moderator for today's event. We're looking to be excited to bring you this educational web seminar presented by LabRoots, the leading scientific social networking website and provider of virtual events and webinars. Before we begin, I'd like to remind everyone that this presentation is interactive. We want to hear from you, so questions, comments can be submitted via the green Q&A button at the lower left of your screen. We'll answer as many questions as we have time for at the end of the presentation. Also, you're viewing the presentation in a slide window. To enlarge that window, click on the icon at the lower right-hand corner of the slide window. If you cannot hear or see this presentation properly, let us know by clicking on the support button at the top right or the Q&A button and let us know that you're having a problem. I will now turn the presentation over to Tammy Germini. Welcome.
My name is Tammy Germini. I am the Director of Laboratory Operations at Geisinger Medical Center. I feel very privileged to be with you today, so thank you for having me. We were very fortunate at Geisinger Medical Center to be able to develop a brand new laboratory medicine building, and with that was fortunate enough to install some of the Roche equipment, and that's what's bringing me here today to talk about our experience that we have. So Geisinger is located in central Pennsylvania. We serve about 44 Pennsylvania counties and have 8 hospital or medical centers that we partner with or actually own. And then we have 66 primary care and specialty clinics. So of course, the evolution of laboratory medicine is what brings us into our future state and what we needed to be able to be successful in the future. So historically, we had very manual processes. A lot of times we had beakers of liquids, we had specimens and compounds that we would have to manipulate on countertops. But in the future state and where we are today, we have more automation, and this is important for us to be able to have a facility that allows us to move forward with changes that may happen. All of you out in the laboratory business certainly are aware of the fact that we are changing constantly, not just our instrumentation, but our workflows. So it was important to us as we were developing this building to establish a way that we could be flexible. And that's what you're going to see as I move forward today. So for us at Geisinger, we wanted to respond to all the changes that were happening. We wanted to design that lab that was capable of accommodating all of those ongoing changes. So as we developed this new medical lab design, we had certain goals in mind. One of them was to incorporate lab-based solutions to address factors driving our practice change. The second was to design a flexible structure in support of an ever-shifting lab environment. And last, to understand the factors that influence the need for a flexible lab. So what are some of those factors that are driving the change? These are those common forces that we need to look at to be able to adapt appropriately. So looking at space constraints, I can't speak for everyone across the country, but I've certainly worked in laboratories in North Carolina and Pennsylvania, and one of the things that we deal with are small amount of footprint. And this is the space that we have is limited by what is available to us. Sometimes it's a closet. Sometimes it's a small office room. So we needed to be able to decide as we built this building what to do with the footprint. We're always focused on improving our patient care. Healthcare is a constant changing environment, and we have to be able to move forward with whatever changes in regulatory agencies or government or just our own healthcare system needs to place the focus on. The next is staffing constraints. Second, third shift, and weekends frequently have less staff available than during the days. So we need to be able to be flexible in how we're able to provide the best patient care utilizing a minimum amount of staffing. The other constraint that we've run into, and I know we're experiencing it across the nation, is a low amount of technologists that are graduating with a high number of technologists that are retiring. So we need to be able to figure out how to function with less staffing, and that was one of the factors that we were considering. Mitigating space, staffing, and workflow design. This is finding that balance, making it less painful for us from the space, the staffing, and a workflow design. We also have changes in volumes and instrumentation. So, for example, we have samples that we'll send out for testing, but as that volume increases, we decide that we should be doing them in-house. So as we change that, we may need additional instrumentation, we may need additional staffing, but whatever the needs arise, we have to deal with those. So those were one of the factors that we needed to take into consideration when building the building. Lean assessment, looking at that constant continuous improvement opportunity and any changes in workflows that may come with that. It's important for us at Geisinger to focus on lean and making sure that we're providing the most efficient and productive environment that we can. So we look to our staff to be able to give us ideas on how to change our workflows. And it's important that as we go forward with that, we provide an environment that is conducive to allowing us to make those changes. And then finally, turnaround times. Providing the best patient care for us in the laboratory typically revolves around turnaround times. Now, here at Geisinger, we actually look at our stat testing performed from collection to result in less than 60 minutes. Now, ideally, we like to meet that in 90% of the time. So for us, it was imperative that we consider that as a part of our building planning. So our flexibility essentials, you know, those common forces that looking at changes in the lab, reconfiguration of our casework, equipment, and instruments to accommodate additional workspaces or technologies, or to reorganize in a more efficient manner. So for us, as we were designing the building, it was imperative that we had that flexibility. So I'll show you a little bit further in the presentation how we were able to take our tabletops and be able to move them to different locations, take our instrumentation and move them to different locations with minimal impact to the structure of the building. A spatial organization, so we can accommodate a new operational model, such as moving from the compartmentalized layout to an open lab plan. So historically, in our old building, we were in rooms, and we had walls all the way around our rooms. And in our new floor plan, we developed an open floor plan concept. So there were no walls. And this was important for us to be able to grow into the future. So we had to deal with where does our electrical or our data or our plumbing come in. So spatial organization was important. So ultimately leading to our infrastructure changes, so the plumbing, electrical, etc., has to be adapted to this equipment and instrument and any of the casework frame reconfigurations that we may have. So historically, labs were designed kind of looking up. So our services and utilities came down from the ceiling. So I will point briefly at the first area on my slide. So we had service columns. So for example, you'll see right here, whoops, excuse me, right here is a service column. So all of the electrical and the data, the plumbing, would be coming down from these electrical columns. The next was the ceiling panel. This was another type of design that was available to most laboratories. And this was an example of where the electrical or data or even the gas lines were all coming out of the ceiling. Not in a column, but just via some lines. And as you can see, that's quite messy and very distracting to the work environment. And then the other type that was available historically were ceiling structures. So you can see how there was a hanging rectangle that came down, and it was almost more of all of the electrical and data just hanging from the ceiling. All of these were very difficult to maneuver around. They were nicely and neat from up in the ceiling. However, you could still see the cords coming down. So as we designed our laboratory, we wanted to look more towards looking down. So our services and utilities come from the floor. This really allowed us a lot more flexibility. If I go back for just a moment to the previous slide, you'll see that each of these were designed so that they're just in one space. They weren't easily moved. The design we developed in our building was to put them in the floor and allowed us to have what's called a raised access floor. So from the point that you see here is 18 inches above where the concrete floor actually is located. And that space in between is where all of our electrical data and plumbing is positioned. So by having the raised floor, we can actually pick up some of the tiles and we can get down below and move any of that electrical or data or plumbing to accommodate new instrumentations, new technologies, or new workflows that we may develop. This has been very beneficial to us. So this kind of shows you a picture of what that raised floor looks like, and I'll take a quick block to show you what area I'm talking about right now. What you see here is the access floor. That would be where the instruments or the people will be walking on. The next area shows you the service utilities that are all running in between that access floor and the base concrete floor. And then, of course, you'll see over to the side any of the casework and equipment. This access has been very beneficial to us. We have been in our building now for approximately 2 years. It'll be 2 years this summer, to be exact. And we have found that we've already experienced some new technologies and a couple of new workflows that allowed us the opportunity to move around some of this data and electrical and plumbing. And it was very simple for us to do so. So we're very fortunate that we've been able to truly already experience the benefits of having the raised floor. What you see here is also some of the modular casework that we have in our laboratory. This casework is easily mobile. We can move it around any direction we need to address any changes in our workflows, or if we get new equipment, we may need to change where it's located. By having the access floor, we can also access any of the electrical data or plumbing from any location. So by moving around this casework, we can also access that data, electrical or plumbing, from any location. So here's an example of where we had changed once we moved into the laboratory. You'll see our before state over here on the left-hand side, and I will highlight that for you for just a moment. You will see we have our pneumatic tube stations up in the left-hand corner. We have 4 tables here in the middle that we did our work. And then over here on the left-hand side is where we did our blood gases. Excuse me, we still do our blood gases, but that was the original configuration. We had a lean consultant come in and evaluate our work processes because we found that on our new instrumentation, it was very easy for us to meet the turnaround times of the testing. This is the receipt to result portion. What we were struggling with is the time the sample was received into the laboratory till the time we put it on the instrument. So we felt like it was important that we evaluate that workflow, and the lean consultant made a number of recommendations based on her observations. So in our after section, you'll see that we made some significant changes. So here we used to have the 4 tables that were set just side by side. We changed that to a U shape so that we could have our staff a little bit closer to our pneumatic tube system and could allow for some flexibility in where the staff was sitting depending on where they were pulling samples out of the pneumatic tube. We also allowed for a change in where the casework was placed. So if you will notice where I mentioned we were doing blood gases before, we now moved that table from over in the right-hand side to the left-hand side. And that allowed a more open concept for the technologist to come in and out of very quickly. We also added a sink to that area because we were spending a lot of time walking further away from receiving the tubes into the receiving and processing area. So we were able to dump, say, ice that came down in the bags, or if we had some extra urine specimens, say in a 24 container, we didn't have to walk so far away to dump that out either. So another opportunity that we had to make a design change was prior to the end of construction. We were very fortunate. We were able to purchase new equipment prior to the end of construction. However, we were already in the development stages of designing the lab, and actually the first 2 floors of the building had actually completed construction by the time we had made the decision on our new equipment that we were going to be bringing into our building. Excuse me. So our architects, of course, had the opportunity to redesign our space and where our instruments were located. And as you can imagine, this could have been a huge obstacle because of the fact that construction had already started. So the before state is on your left-hand side here, and you will see that we had in purple some of our automated chemistry, hematology, and coagulation equipment that was now going to be incorporated to our new automation line. When we designed the new facility, we knew we wanted the open floor concept. So luckily, that worked to our advantage as we were moving in this new piece of equipment and designing where it would be located. So as you'll see in the after pictures, we have this section here that we moved from east to west to north to south and had minimal changes in the way the electrical and data and plumbing needed to be redesigned simply because we had the raised floor and it was conveniently located in the same general area. So there was minimal impact to the design of the building for the new placement of the equipment. Now, we did originally have designed over here on the left-hand side some semi-automated testing, and we flipped that down to this bottom section here, as you'll see, by just simply moving some of the casework that was originally going to be in the building. We also changed some of the electrical and plumbing and data, but again, minimal impact because of the raised floor made it very convenient to simply move things around a little bit. So in summary, we have some evolving testing technology, ever changing within the laboratory environment. I know all of you experience this. Unfortunately, that can truly impact us when you have concrete floors, walls that may or may not allow you the space for you to be able to introduce a new piece of equipment into. Something as simple as a doorway to be able to get the equipment into the building or into a specific room really provides a significant space constraint that a lot of people struggle to deal with. So we were very fortunate when we developed the building. We now have that flexible response that as we have these changes, we won't have to have walls busted down or major construction for the flooring. So that's a benefit to us and met one of the objectives that we were looking at when designing the building. We moved away from that traditional distribution of services looking up. So we don't have to worry about the eyesore of the various tubings or plugs that are hanging from the ceiling. We don't have a limitation from where those columns were from old spaces that we had to deal with. We have that new approach of looking down at our raised floor, and that flooring allows us such flexibility that we can really change as the future brings it to us. In our old building, we were literally in the 100-year-old portion of the building and had been there that long. So we would expect that we'll spend the next 100+ years in our new building that'll allow us such flexibility that as technology and workflows change, we won't have to worry about a large expense that we will have to contribute to making those changes. And then designing flexibility. So all of the opportunities that we have with our casework makes it possible for us to change with the workflows too. Our casework is frequently on wheels, so it's very easy to move. And then the raised floor, of course, adding that functionality that's easy. So not only does it allow for ease, but it also allows for limited disruptions in allowing us to make a quick change. As I had shown you before, that receiving and processing area where we made those changes, all of that was done in less than a day. And if we had been in another facility or even our old lab space, unfortunately, we would have had to have significant downtime and potential major construction that would have limited the schedule and the cost associated with that. I want to take this time to thank you for having me and open it up for any questions that you may have.
Thank you for your informative presentation, Tammy, and for such valuable details. We want to get right to the questions and input from our audience. So here's a reminder for all audience members about how you can communicate with us. Questions can be submitted via the Q&A button at the lower left. If we are unable to get to your questions due to time restraints, Tammy will reach out via email. Let's turn to our first audience questions. Our first question is, the raised access floor design seems very beneficial. Is that throughout the entire lab? And what would be the cost for creating such an addition to a lab?
We do have limitations on where it is on the other floors. So our building is actually 3 floors. We have our patient access areas on the first floor. So for example, lab collections and apheresis. Our second floor is anatomic pathology, and our third floor is clinical pathology. So our first and second floor does not have the raised floor. It's only on the third floor. It is throughout the core laboratory and our blood bank. And the cost was approximately 10% more. And we have found that that was totally valuable for us. We have no problem and don't feel like that was a significant cost in the big scheme of things.
Thank you so much. We have one more question from an audience member. Technology constantly changes and seems to be the greatest challenge for laboratories and all businesses. It appears that you've created a structure that can easily adapt to some of these changes. However, with a limited budget, is there any advice you could give to other labs as they begin to adapt their structures as to what they should focus on first, like a primary focus?
A lot of various options that we were able to take advantage of. And I am very fortunate that we had that flexibility. I would highly recommend that the raised flooring. If you're limited on where your funding can go, the raised floor for us has been so beneficial, and the flexibility of the casework. And I don't see that the cost is as significant as, say, putting in one of the columns or the additional walls. So I think you may find that you can balance some of that cost without having additional. Now, one of the things that we found with the core lab and the open concept that was probably a challenge for us that we still deal with is the sound and the sound absorption. That was one of the learning lessons that we had. We wish we had invested more funding in sound absorption. So we're actually kind of paying for that now because we're having to add cost in the long run. So I think if you spend the money up front for something like the raised floor, you'll find that your long-term cost is a savings, not an addition.
Thank you so much for that, Tammy. Do you have any closing remarks you'd like to share with the audience members before we close today?
For giving me the opportunity to be here today. I feel very fortunate to have had this experience here at Geisinger to be able to develop this new laboratory and have had frequent visitors come and see our location and experience what this cutting edge technology we have here and the extra steps that we're able to provide to the laboratory business, I think is a huge benefit because it gives others the opportunity to learn from us. So we welcome that opportunity. If anybody'd like to reach out to us and come make a visit, we would welcome you to be here.
Tammy, Germini, thank you again for this valuable presentation. I'd also like to thank LabRoots for making today's educational webcast possible. Audience members, today's webcast will be available for on-demand till August 2017. Keep an eye out for an email from LabRoots alerting you when the webcast will be available for replay. We encourage you to forward that announcement to your colleagues who may have missed today's live event. Thanks for joining us, and we hope to see you again. See you next time. Goodbye.